Tahira. Kia ora katoa, kia ora Aotearoa, kia ora matua waka. Welcome to Kōrero Live. These are a series of interviews that we're doing over Te Wiki o reo Māori to celebrate the use of te reo and to share stories of real people and their journey with te reo. The reason we do this, the purpose behind this kaupapa is that over the years I have been asked many times why bother learning Māori when Māori don't speak Māori? And it just showed the lack of understanding or the ignorance to our history. And of course, children will now be educated with New Zealand history as of next year, and that will help solve the problem. In the meantime, the reason is that there was a formal language and cultural eradication program from the New Zealand government starting in 1867, and it's discoverable in the web, so you can do your reading and find out about it. But of course, the impact on 3 generations of Māori has impacted the use of te reo, and of course that's why we have Te Wiki o reo Māori, and this happens to be the 50th year since the petition was presented to government to make positive changes. So with that, I'd like to invite you, Neil, to introduce yourself. And tēnā rawa atu koe. Thank you very much for being here.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Neil Waka tōku ringoa, ko ruahine te awa, te maunga ko ōraua te awa, ko Ngāti Kauwhata tōku iwi, ko aorangi no Kauwhata oku marae, ko Warren te tauranga waka tōku papa, ko Neil Waka tōku ringoa. Appreciate you being here today. Appreciate what you're doing. It's amazing because, as you spoke to, alluded to earlier, we're all on different journeys. And, you know, one of the fascinating things that I've discovered since being at Whakaata Māori is there are so many different levels of Māori. I helped set up the syllabus for Māori pronunciation when I was at TV3. And when I look back now, it was okay, but I'm not an expert, but I just knew what I knew up until that point, when there are so many other things now to consider. For example, a word like I used to say, ensure people would say taupo properly, and for the journalists and the presenters. And so it's a different word now. You have macrons, which I love because it shows you where the elongation of the letter is or the sound. And so the word is actually taupo. Which I didn't know this, and my journey has enabled me to arrive at a point where it's an accelerated journey because there's a much greater expectation that when you work at Whakaata Māori, you're going to be better. And to be fair, I'm at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to te reo Māori. There are so many, and I feel incredibly privileged to work with so many absolutely amazing and outstanding people that are so good at the reo. And I learn so much. I hear the speaking, I'm gaining more, and every opportunity I have to do a class, to spend time with real teachers, I grab it and try and make the most of it. And it's not easy, which is why one of the things is I appreciate people like you so much who see this. This is our language. It's not a language for the people over there or the people over there. This is our New Zealand Aotearoa language, our indigenous language, and it's special. I mean, you'll know yourself when people come to Aotearoa, they one of the things that stands out is the Māori bit, the ethnicity, the indigenous bit. That's what really, you know, we get that when we arrive at the airport. People love this. And that helps them to realize that this is a cultural place. Not everyone embraces it, and everyone will have their own reasons. And it's sad to me to some extent, but, you know, as we talk to, we're all on our journey. I don't know if we ever reach nirvana. I think perhaps we might grab little pieces of nirvana along the way and understand a little bit more. but it's also not a direct translation from English, which is a little bit more interesting when you're learning it. But even the pronunciation is incredibly important.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about that when you were pronouncing Taupo, and I know that I've just said it wrong, but what I was thinking was maybe one of the things that we could do now, considering that this is something that you do, is you could maybe give me a little lesson, because I know that my normal Taupo is probably the very New Zealand Taupo, not the correct Māori pronunciation, which I would love to be taught if we could take just a minute to do that.
I would absolutely love to, but just really consider that I'm not that good. I'm still on a journey, but I understand some things a lot better than I was.
So I was just going to say, let's put the elephant on the table. I have just done the classic Pākehā placing the expectation on a person because they're Māori to be able to facilitate something in Māori, be it
but I don't mind that
language. But my apologies. I'm aware of that and normally wouldn't. I maybe thought that it was okay to ask. So
no, 100%.
This is a brilliant lesson for everyone to actually see us living in the moment.
No, please. I appreciate you asking, and I'll give everything I've got. Yeah. I just realized more so since being at Whakaata Māori how much I don't know and how much I'm, because life should be about evolution, right? We should be continuing to get better and do better. And if we just ignore something because it's too hard, or if we don't want to embrace something like our culture because of whatever reason, then that's your own journey. But I guess the disclaimer is I'm with so many incredible, outstanding Māori practitioners that I find it hard to say that I'm any kind of expert, because I'm really not. But from my learnings, happy to teach. From what I know, I'm happy to offer that kind of.
Well, I think this is a really important subject that I'd like to raise, if I may, and I've learned a couple of different languages, and I think probably the French have been the harshest to me. To all my French friends out there, I remember speaking French to a French waitress actually in an Auckland restaurant, and I said, bonjour, je m'appelle Ryan, comment vous appelez-vous? And she just said nothing and left the table. And later on at the end, when we were paying the bill, we're actually with my father-in-law, my parents-in-law, and he turned around and said, so where are you from? You're obviously not French. And she goes, oh no, I'm French, but he did not speak French. And I was just like, whoa, it wasn't a joke. It was serious. And it was like, I speak French, but this whole thing around...
I know there is an elitism with French. There is.
Yeah.
It's like French Canadians aren't accepted. Even though they speak French, they're not as readily accepted in France as they are in Canada, for example. There is an elitism. And that comes down to, I guess, history and who they are and what they are. But I think that's when people are trying and they're trying to make an effort. I did the same thing behind the Sacré-Cœur in Paris. I couldn't find it, and I was actually on the other side of it. And I went up to a French woman. I go, I've got this. Whatever I said, she just looked at me like, it's like, you don't get anything from what I'm saying? Oh, I must have been way off.
Yeah. So, I've worked with some kayako teachers who have talked about, safe space, and have even been taught a sentence which says, I'm a learner of te reo, therefore I will say get some things wrong. I can't remember it because it was 2019, pre-COVID, and obviously COVID took precedence over a lot of things, including my language lessons. But I would like people to feel more encouraged, and also those that do see something wrong, I would love for them to come and say, rather than get upset with me or feel like I have offended them, is to come and kindly say, don't say it like taupo, say it like taupo, or whatever it might be in the instance that it happens, because that's how we all learn, and that's how we will get to our 1 million speakers by 2035, and that's how we will.
So what I've done is when I talk to people and they might say Taupo, I go blah, blah, blah. I won't correct them because, as I say, we're all on our own journeys. But then if I talk about it, I go, because down in Taupo, the blah 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 blah, and I'm hoping that they'll pick up on that, because there's a macron, and Māori words have a meaning. They're not just particularly like taupo. They have meanings, and so if you don't pronounce the words correctly, then you're taking away the mana from the word, and you're taking away any kind of meaning associated with that word. So it just changes the whole context. But we both grew up not speaking Māori. My dad wasn't allowed to speak it. My grandmother, my nanny, didn't feel it was right to teach any of us because we'd just get into trouble.
Yeah.
So what I felt when I got into broadcasting, I felt it was very important to do my part as a Māori to ensure other people around me were being helped, at least with the limited knowledge that I had. And so you get words like, if you say, I used to, some of the presenters, they go, how do you do the taupo thing again? I'll say, just think of it as TOE and dash PAW, and you get taupo. And so when people look at Māori, sometimes they just don't get it. It's like the O. The O's in my opinion, one of the most difficult words, right? Because if you're saying reo instead of reo, some people can't hear the difference. And so is it their fault they can't hear the difference? No, it's not, because I think it's more important that people are giving it a go. And so that's one thing that's crucially important.
Well, I just learned that I have been saying reo with the English O, and interesting. When last year I was fortunate to hear Renata Blair from BNZ speak at an internal BNZ event, and so it wasn't public. No, you wouldn't have been able to hear it if you weren't with BNZ. But he himself, as an amazing auditor, said that he practices Māori vowels for half an hour a day.
Wow, good.
And I fell off my chair and went, why do you need to practice it? And just as I was thinking that, he answered and said, I spend most of my day speaking English. So just like anything, if you want to get better at anything, you need to practice it. Nice. And therefore, if I'm not speaking in Māori enough through the day, therefore I have to spend time practicing it. So I was like, if you're not speaking, and this comes to the thing I've learned with languages, because I've lost my Italian, I've lost my French, because I'm not speaking it on a daily basis. And it does. It's like a muscle. You don't go to the gym, it starts shrinking, right? Yeah. And I was like, so you actually, so it was quite a mind-opening thing. And just as you were talking, I had another moment like that. It was about when you're talking about the meaning, and if you don't pronounce it right, it takes the mana away. So two things I wanted to touch on for especially non-Māori, but this is a little bit of a funny side story. My brother lives in Sweden, so I've been learning Swedish at one part of my life. And the word for ham... Just
can I cut in there? I think it's amazing that you're doing this, that it's important for you to, he's there, so why not take that opportunity? You're here, take another opportunity. I think that's amazing. Good work.
Thank you. I'll share a little bit about why I learned different languages. There's a few reasons across all of them, but Te Reo Māori is the extra special reason. It's our Indigenous language, and it's, I say it's the language of our country. But the word for ham is also this, if you mispronounce it, which is easy to do, because I'll tell you in a second, it's the same word for ass. So I was in the supermarket calling out to my brother and his wife going, shall I get the skinker? And the skinker and hinker, I can't remember the exact difference, but one is ham, which I was standing in front of, and one is ass. So literally this whole 20, 30 people around the supermarket in this space all looked around and then looked at my brother and looked at me, and my brother called across the room. He said, You just said ass, not ham. And of course, they understood and they all laughed. Everyone laughed. But it was quite, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. And people come up and started speaking to me and go, oh, you're learning Swedish. Wow, where are you from? So those are the sorts of moments of learning languages that can be quite fun. But so you thinking of that, when you talked about it, it made me realize when you learn a language, like say Swedish, right? And I'm also learning my indigenous language of Irish, and they just sound like sounds. And Swedish is known as being quite sing-songy. That would be how it's described by a lot of people. So yeah, making that jump from seeing or thinking the word as a sound to it actually being a word with meaning and understanding that meaning is one thing. But then, as every culture has their cultural differences, you know, te reo is a tonga, a gift, and what you're saying carries mana, and this is particular to the Māori culture that non-Māori and especially Pākehā don't get, because they try to apply their own culture. This is just a word that describes something. This is how you say it. You know, it's so people to really learn te reo, I'm going to say, really need to understand the culture as much as say the words or pronounce the words properly to bring it all together.
And I think that's where waiata also comes in, because through learning kapahaka, for example, you gain a greater understanding around how the words are pronounced. And the way I said O was a difficult one for a lot of people. E is as well, because people might say, they might roll the R, but they might say reo, because they don't quite hear the difference in what they're saying. But the vowel sounds in Māori are there for a purpose. They're not just there to fill spaces. And for example, if you're saying reo, so it's really difficult. It's not easy. And so you go into it by going re like air, or like an or, so reo. And if you change the way, in fact, one of the people I was training, I saw in her auto cue, she had for taupo, she had TOE-PAW, because she wanted to pronounce it correctly, but she couldn't do it by spelling it the Māori way. But it's a start, and it sounds nice. And things like taupo, there are a few things that don't want to get too complicated, but for example, the T with O, A, and O, A, the T with U and I are kind of a softer T. Didn't know this previously. So it's like tūmaki. It's like, it's like that. It's not a hard T as people like it. Like for taupo, it's more of a harder sounding D. And then with a macron on the O, it's taupo. That I'm still coming to terms with this.
I've never had this explained to me before, so I'm just going through it all in my mind. And I think I just realized, because you said almost sounded like you said too mucky, and that to me, I think you were saying what I would pronounce as too mickey, and I just clicked that, even though I know not to pronounce an E as an English E, when I say too mickey, I am. So here I am thinking I'm doing my wonderful pronunciation, and it's funny. You can pronounce one word correctly, and therefore you think you're pronouncing another word correctly. But in fact, you can be bringing back your English vowels without even realizing it, which is what I just cottoned onto.
And that's what happens. But it's not a bad thing, because you're working to get on the right path, and you're on that journey. Now, I've heard leaders, principals say tēnā katoa, and they're going through the motions, and they'll say this every time, and it's like what they need to actually do is pull back, because if you do it, find out if what you're doing is the right way, and then you make adjustments. But if you're doing it year after year after year, do you really care about it, or is it just a token thing you feel you need to say? Because, for example, tēnā, E, the E's got a macron, and so is the A. So it's tēnā. It's not tēnā. It's not like a tēnā, go and grab a tēnā and go to the pub. It's tēnā, and it's called, because see the OU, when you get the double vowels, they don't need to be sounded strongly, but they need to have a sound in there. So if you go K-O-U, go, it's go. It's not ko, it's not ko, it's koto. And here I am, not expert, but these are the things that I've learned over the last few years. So tēnā koto. And that makes the big difference. That means you're actually using the words for what they were, their original purpose, instead of just throwing your own into it. So tēnā koto, and katoa is, it's just straight. So it's katoa. It's not tēnā koutou katoa or tēnā koutou katoa. And it changes the emphasis. So just even saying that would be tēnā koutou katoa. And so the
really
O and
cool.
the A.
This is one of the. This is adding to, like, this is how I like to learn a language, like getting broken down.
Yeah, I agree.
And working through it, because one of the things I realized is, so I had a moment. I won't go through the whole detail, but I stumbled through emceeing an event. The brief thing is I had the run sheet changed on me, and I went from a mihi to a pauwhiri, and I was just about to walk up, and I was like, whoa, this is a huge change. Where's it going to happen? So I stumbled as a result. But people thought that I was, didn't know what I was doing.
They would have appreciated what you're doing.
Oh, I got told off. But just this year, been able to have the discussion and iron it out and share what happened, and they've now gone, oh wow, okay. But it shouldn't have been. I now speak my te reo so fast, and therefore I actually miss some syllables out because I go brrr, in a little panic. So I've been making a conscious effort. So when we started, you might have seen me pause, and I was like, shit, I've frozen completely. I've got to get kia ora katoa, kia ora Aotearoa, because I like, I know it's an English thing, but the alliteration, it has a nice beat to it, to then come with kia ora matua waka, as you remember. But yeah, that speeding up. But I have a question around that tēnā koe, because I hear people say tēnā koe, but when I say the fuller version of tēnā rawa atu koe, which is thank you very much, for those that want to know the translation, I do put the elongation on the macrons. But when I say tēnā koe, you can hear it go really fast. But that's what I hear a lot of other people say. And I don't know, maybe right. Yeah. So it's being aware of those things. This is part of learning the language. And this.
Yeah, you don't have to be fast. I'll tell you who are fast. First language speakers, because their language is just, and I have to really pay attention to hear what they're saying, and I think they love it secretly, but they just go, and so you can hear the difference between a second language learner and a first. Now the first learnt and obviously fluent, a lot better than me, but a second language speaker who's fluent, from my experience, and I'm not sure this is across the board, from my experience, have a different level of Māori, because they didn't learn running around the house. They didn't learn little colloquialisms like this, but they learned the right ways, the context, the right ways to do things. And we've got some exceptional second language speakers in this country, just Scotty and Stacey Morrison, just to name two. I mean, exceptional reo Māori speakers. But it's impressive because English was their first language and Māori is their second language, and they've worked really, really hard. And as I say, there are different levels to it. And then, of course, then you have your various dialects, like just for the words, like ngaitahu, we'd say ngaitahu because that's the way we say it. It's South Island iwi. They say kaitahu, so they don't use an NG in their language, they just use a K. And so there's this kaitahu. So anyone you say, if you ask where you're from and they say kaitahu, then you know they're from that area. But if I was to say, I'm talking to someone from Ngaitahu, because that's the way we'd say it. So there are lots of different ways that different iwi across the country might say things. And I'm getting better at that. I'm understanding where people are from, just because of the way they pronounce it.
There's a lot of difference in the dialects, but I hadn't actually seen or heard, I hadn't heard an example until then. The one that I've seen is Tainui will spell double A rather than A with a macron.
And so do you know why they did that?
No.
Because when they started to articulate the language in writing, we only had typewriters, so we didn't have computers to put a macron up the top. So they put the double, and I think they still use it today for the most part. They use double, but that's really hard for me, who's a second learner, learning Māori second, because when I'm reading it on the screen, you only have a small screen, and this is why I had to elevate my learning, because I'm representing whakaata Māori, and the pressure was on, the emphasis was on ensuring that I could do the best I could. Because at the start, I struggled with reading English and then going into some Māori and then back to English. I'm looking at this going, holy shit, all right, how do I do this? So I have to do it slightly differently. So I needed to, I'm more comfortable now. But I had one intro, probably first 6 months there, that involved Spanish, Hawaiian, Māori, and English. So there were 4, and I'm just needing to drop in from one, drop into the other, drop into the other. And it was hard, man. It was like great, and I lean into challenges. There's no doubt about that. And I'm going to get things wrong sometimes, but I work really hard to make fewer mistakes. And I ask questions. I ask questions all the time. Piripi Taylor's one of our hot shots, Piata Melbourne. And I'm asking every chance I get, blah, blah, why would you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Cool. So I'm surrounded by these incredible people, and I'm just absorbing all this new information and then trying to utilize it within the realms of what I'm doing. When I'm introducing someone, we like to talk about their iwi. Some of them have like 6, 7 iwi. And to see lots of Māori words going across the screen, might be 16 letters across. So it's not easy for someone like me. And so I break that up a little bit, because things in Māori, as in any language, things that are important are names, things that are important tupuna, things that are important, like really important are iwi. So you can't, well, you shouldn't mess up someone's iwi, because all those people will be going, that's not what we're called. Why are you doing that? So I needed to work harder.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking, I almost want to build I'm going to build a list of all these different things, right? So the ham in the Swedish, but you're talking about the flicking from one language to another. And my godfather, a Kiwi, who went and lived in Japan for 30 years, and when he moved back, and I was talking to him, I'm from Dunedin, where we talk really fast normally, and we don't open our mouth, and he said, you know, FFS, Ryan, I have to translate your English into Japanese, make my response, then translate it back to English. Slow down. And that was, you know, so it's not as though it's Pākehā trying to translate into Māori. He's Kiwi translating to Japanese to translate back to English. And it's a really good point for people to realize and understand. So if you're doing, I think you mentioned 4 languages, English, te reo, Spanish, and one other, then yes, you were in the moment and on your prompter, the small screen, yeah, that would be like, it'd be quite intense, I'm sure.
It was freaky. It was freaky. Look, I say that, you know, I spent over 11 years fronting at TV3 and then more than 11 years at TVNZ. Love the experience, massive experiences. But there's more pressure, and I've said this to people, there's more pressure being at whakaata Māori, because not only is this who I am, but there is for me, there's a a personal interest in ensuring that I'm doing the right thing by these people who started the organization, by these people who are doing all they can to ensure that Māori stories are being told. And so I need to get that right. And this is, I'm never complacent about it. I'm never thinking, got this, it's all good. I'm just constantly focused, learning, focused. And then I'll get there one day.
Yeah. Well, we've had a fantastic kōrero. So now I'm really thinking about my vowels and whether I am pronouncing.
Well, let's go through. Let's go through that.
It's not bad. Or not. Just let me say it's not bad. It's making me more aware and more. What's the other word I was trying to think of? But yes, we've been having what I was going to say is we've been having a wonderful kōrero, and we're just sort of coming up on time. We didn't stick to the format, but that's fine. We've been as Lee said, let's just riff. And that's kind of what we have today. And it's been an amazing journey learning around things that I had not been told before around the different pronunciations based on the letters that are grouped together and in some orders. So the hard T, the soft T, etc., depending on that, the pronunciation. And yes, just a general discussion on some of the things that by accident we fell into. And by the way, I'm giving you a moment to collect your thoughts, to think of your closing remarks. And this is the point of why I'm sharing a little bit of a summary. And talking, I accidentally put myself in the position of asking you to putting that cultural load, I think is the correct term, which is now the new problem, I guess, that everyone is facing. Because it is, and there's been studies done by Dr. Jared Ha around the double jobs, double work, and if we just think about the discussion, we can make it really practical to understand the flipping from one language to the other, whether it be you flipping from te reo to English, or
that was the most beautiful way you said te reo.
Thank you. I think I got that one right actually, and then you said that, so yeah, cool.
Perfect.
Another example of celebrating small successes, something that we talk about in another subject when we're talking about mental health, celebrate small successes. So let's do that with our te reo. And I lost my little train of thought. I was on 3 to 4 points all lined up there, but the various things that we've stepped through have been quite an education, more so for everybody to benefit from. Almost like a lesson in te reo, through some deliberate lessons and some accidental lessons. So now I want to get my macrons right, because I really like that saying "thank you very much," which is tēnā, which has the E with a macron and the A, so TENA, tēnā rawa atu koe. So for me, the koe it's spelled KOE, but it's almost like KWOE.
Yeah, so if you're saying it and it's getting that E, again, the E and the O are complicated words for just only English speaking people that have never grown up with it. So when you say koe, it's ko e. So it's koe. So it's ensuring that you hit that o, and it doesn't have to be hard on each, but hit that o and then finish it with e. Like, what are you doing there? So it'd be koe. Koe.
Yeah. Koe. Okay. So tēnā rawa atu koe. Matua waka. So now over to you, please, for closing remarks around Te Wiki Aotearoa Māori.
Te Wiki Aotearoa Māori is incredibly important for our country, because with the revitalization and legislation that was put into place 50 years ago, it's enabled Māori to reclaim some of their identity. Because as you know, at schools, grandparents and parents were hit, whipped, caned for saying anything towards the Māori language. And so it was almost lost to us, which would have been a travesty, because as you say, it is a taonga. It is something that's incredibly important for us. And not being afraid of it, you don't have to be afraid of it to learn it, to understand it better. I'm Māori, and yet I'm still going through, and I suspect for the rest of my life, I'll be going through an evolution of how much better am I today than I was yesterday. and the day before. And that's who I am. I want to just get better. I'm not going to hit the mark all the time. When I was invited to co-host the Matariki Awards this year, it was a little daunting for me because I'm in a room full of people, for the most part, who are exceptional reo speakers. And here I am now, even though it was in English, there were a lot of Māori elements to it. I'm just going, I have such a big responsibility now to make sure I get these right, to make sure they sound right, because for some Māori, when people, it doesn't feel like they're trying sometimes or whatever, it's a bit grating. Like just say rotorua, and that's a hard one to say because it's a double R. Now I know some Chinese friends can't say R's. They don't have R in their language. They never learned what an R was. And so it's very hard for them. So I've given them ways to use a D, for example, in their thinking. So it's like rotorua, dotorua, and then bring that back a little bit to rotorua so they can get that R. But they're difficult to say. And I grew up in rotorua, so I never said rotorua. I always said rotorua, rotorua, rotorua. When I left and I would say it, I felt, I've got to start saying it right. I've got to give it the presence and the essence for what it was designed. Another one, whangare. I didn't know there was a macron after the second R. Whangare. It's not whangare, it's not wangare, it's not any of these, it's whangare. And learning the differences. And that's why these street names are incredibly important, in my opinion, because they'll have macrons and they'll provide an opportunity for people to constantly be confronted with Māori words that they may not get right, but at some stage they may work harder to encourage what is unique and special to Aotearoa New Zealand.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your closing remarks.
Pleasure.
Nakwe. And some amazing lessons for me, which I hope to share through this recording with others and use it as examples and encouragement and understanding so that, yes, we can get everybody on that path to learning the language of Aotearoa and one of our 3 official languages. So I think it will be, a beautiful future when we have these spaces. And I think that I've been listening to you say it, so I hope I get it right. Whakata, which is the new name for Māori television. I watched quite a bit of it, watched quite a bit of you.
Thank you.
The hearing it in your mind and helps pick it up. So using all my tricks that I've learned through learning other languages to add te reo. And of course, the things I learned today around the different sounds, the different pronunciations, just helps me understand how to improve on those levels because, it's... I hear people talk about the levels quite a lot, but now that was one of the things that also stood out for me is not knowing that the different sounded T's depending on the letter arrangement and whatnot. And now I get that's just part of the levels. So when you can hear that in someone speaking, you can recognize that they get that.
Yes.
They know that.
Yes.
So yes, there's quite a lot more to learn than making a sound that represents those printed letters that has a meaning that you can now express yourself with.
And I think, as you said, it's about starting that journey. It's about getting on that journey. And it doesn't matter where you are on it. If you're on that journey, kei te pai, ka nui te akwe.
With that, we'll say tēnā koe and ka kite anō to everybody out there. Thank you very much once again, Neil.
Thank you so much.